Hello. Okay, so we're going to be making a kind of vertical climbing platformer. In my scene, I have a player character. Obviously, you can use whatever graphics you've got. And then I've got a couple of platforms that have a 2D collider on them. And then I've got a ladder, which currently has nothing on it because I'm going to go through all that in a little while. But basically, the goal is to get this character to move along this platform, jump over the gaps, move up that ladder, and then make his way across and move up that one. It's relatively straightforward in practice. So first thing we're going to do is make sure we've got a character set up, which I know you do. I've got a rigid body 2D and I've got the box collider 2D, and then I've created a script which I've also added to the player, and then we're just going to take a look at that before we do anything else. So last time I saw you, we got the basics of this working. So if the left key is pressed, so we're going to look for the input, and if it is equal to the left key, we are going to adjust the position of the character by moving the X position to the left. We do that by minusing its current position, and it gives the effect that it's moving. Okay. Now, when I went over this with you, we used a number here, but since we want the move speed left and right to be the same, like if we move left or right, we want those two numbers to be equal. It becomes effort if we have to change that a lot. And if we want to maybe slow it or maybe make it move half speed, we have to then go back and change a lot. So what I've done is I've come in here and I've created a public float move speed. Now a float basically means it's going to be a decimal. It's not going to be a whole number, okay? So public float move speed, and then I've replaced my two numbers in here with move speed. So originally, I think you had something like 0.5f. We just want to make that move speed. And then if you save that, come back into Unity, and then you'll see down on the player control script, or player controller, whatever you've called it, you'll see move speed 0.1. And now instead of having to go in and change the line of code all the time, you could just come in here and change that to 0.15 or 0.33, whatever you want. And it just allows you to play with the speed a little and allow you to adjust it. Now the best thing is that when you play it and you've got the move speed working, you can just come in here and change this to 0.03, let's say, and you can see it's moving much slower now. So you can come in here, you don't have to keep restarting the game. You can mess about with a number and see what you like and see what works for you. So I think 0.1 is good, personally. I think there's a decent speed to it. But when you press play again and you come out of it, you'll see that it's reverted to its previous. So you then have to come in and change that value. And that is what it'll use all the time then. So it's a good way to test things. It's a good way to kind of mess about and see how different speeds could affect your game. But what I want you to do is make sure you are at this stage. I'm going to stop recording this section, and then I'm going to basically edit it and have one long video so you can kind of jump through bit by bit, if that makes sense. So make sure you've got this working, make sure you're happy with the speed, etc. Make sure you can come into Unity and edit the movement speeds, and once you're done with that, just carry on with the rest of the video, okay? Okay, so moving on to jumping. Jumping is a little bit different, a little bit more complicated. We still have our player character selected, and I've added a new variable down here, which is called jump power. So I'll show you the code first. Exactly the same as we're getting input for left or right arrow, we're now going to get input for up arrow, okay? Up here, I've defined a jump power variable, exactly the same as move speed, so it's public float jump power, so it can be a decimal again. And then I've defined something called the rigid body 2D. Now, we've already added that to our player. You can see here. So this is what controls the physics, what controls force it to fall, force it to bump into things, all that kind of stuff, okay? So we've got rigid body 2D, RB, and then in our start function, so as soon as the game starts, we are gonna basically define this as the one that is on our game object. So we're gonna call it RB, and it's basically looking at our game object, so it's looking at the player, and it's finding the component which is called rigid body 2D. It doesn't do anything with it, it just wants to know what that is, and so when we do use it, it knows what it's looking for. So whenever we call RB, it is going to say, this component here, I want to do something. I don't know what I want to do, but this is what I'm going to be using. So then, once you've got this line in and that line in, conscious to add the 2D in here. In our up arrow code, we basically want to add rb.addForce vector2 up. So if you remember a vector2, I'll just open MS Paint real quick. So because it's on 2 vectors, we've got an up and a down, and then we have a right and a left. So the up and the down is X, and the right and the left is X, sorry, and the up and down is Y. So basically vector 2.up is basically saying, I want to do that, I want to go up the way, and I want to do something with that, okay? So we've got vector 2.up, and we're going to times it by our jump power. So whatever the up value is right now, we're going to multiply it by our jump power, and it should force the character up in the air, okay? So once you've done that and saved it, you'll have jump power over here. I'm just going to change it to 25 real quick. And this will be buggy, but you'll get the idea, okay? So we can still move left and right, but then when we press up, you'll see that you get a bounce, okay? But the issue is, if you hold your up key, it'll just constantly do that. It'll consistently do that over and over again, okay? So what we want to do now is basically... sorry about that. Basically what we want to do now is make it so that we can't hold the up key, okay? You'll start getting some really cool effects by doing this. Whoop. But yeah, you'll get the idea, okay? So in here, we basically want to create a new function. So we're going to come down before this very last bracket, because it's part of this player controller script class, okay? And we are going to create an IEnumerator, and we will call it jump check. And you don't have to do anything with that, you just need to get your brackets, and inside that we can do yield yield return new wait 4 seconds. And this is where it gets interesting, because again you have more control over this, alright? So come back up here, we'll create a public float jump delay. And then in here, we will say jump delay. And finally, we are going to create a boolean, so a public bool can jump. Now, basically, what we're going to do is we're going to tell the game, can this player jump? Now, right off the basis, we are going to say that can jump is equal to true. All right, you can always jump from the start of the game, but once you've jumped, we'll say, no, you can't jump until this delay has happened, all right? So we'll do jump check, can jump equals false, and then we'll do can jump equals true. So what will happen is whenever we call this, it'll say, okay, you can no longer jump, you'll need to wait the jump delay. So if that's 5 seconds, a millisecond, half a second, whatever that delay is, and then we can jump again. And then what we can do is, in our up arrow code, we can do if can jump. So if it's true, we can jump, but it's going to call this jump check method. Okay, start coroutine jump check, and finally I'm going to take this jump code and I'm just going to pop it in here. So this will only be able to run once, and basically, if I can jump, then it will let me jump, but then it'll basically put a delay on it, so I'll have to have landed back on the ground before I can jump again. Does that make sense? This is a very hacky way of doing it, but it's the most efficient and quickest way of basically getting the kind of mechanic you'd expect. Okay, so let's save that. I hope you understand that we can go through this in person, but worst case scenario, you copy this and it works and you're happy with that, okay? So once we save it, we come back into Unity, and so can jump is, we don't need to make the can jump public, okay? So come back, and we'll come back into here. So I'm going to set my jump delay to 500, so it's going to be in milliseconds, okay? So half a second to jump. And then once you press play, you'll see nothing's really working. So you have to then increase your jump power to something much bigger. I'm going to go 250 to start with. But now there's that delay of waiting for me to jump again. So let's change this to 0.500 perhaps. Maybe I'm totally mistaken. There we go. And now we kind of have this jumping mechanic. Now, the reality is, right, if you keep jumping, you're going to get this weird effect. So you might need to just mess around with perhaps the jump power or the jump delay. So I'm going to change that to 0.65. And now you can you can still kind of double jump, but it's getting there. You get the idea, right? And it's okay for it to be buggy. It doesn't have to be perfect. But that is, in essence, the jump mechanics.